Throughout the course of recorded history, music and the arts have played a prominent role in home and society. The sharing of stories, ideas, and virtues would not have the same intended influence or purpose without the use of sight and sound as delivering, reinforcing agents that pass easily from generation to generation. Styles have changed, genres have come and gone, oral landscapes have transformed. Many composers and artists have left their mark on our society, while some, though having impressed contemporaries, have disappeared, perhaps awaiting rediscovery. Through all these changes, the combined mediums of sound and silence, inspired by story, have been a continuous progression of the greater collective, which is music. In this evening's feature, we will consider the value of music from the philosophical to the practical to the applicable. We at Pakachoag Music School invite you, our viewers, to think more deeply about the role of music in life, finding parallels beyond the studio. This is 21 Ways to Harmony, from music lessons to life in the sciences. Harmony is balance. It cannot exist without two singular, independent entities. In a literal sense, harmony is the interaction between two or more tones, with those interactions being defined as either consonant or dissonant. The classification of these terms can vary from culture to genre to era, though the balancing notion of tension and resolution has endured as harmonic principle. According to the ancient Greek philosopher Plato in his Socratic-style dialogue, The Republic, music was an essential pairing with gymnastics from an early age in order to achieve a harmonious balance between body and mind. He argued that gymnastics developed a temperament of hardness and ferocity, while music provided the countering of softness and leniency. An out-of-balance tendency towards one or the other would cause the body to be out of harmony, with the gymnast favored turning savage, and the music favored soft beyond what is good. Yet, the quote, rightly educated, end quote, in equal counterbalance would yield a harmonic strength, with the gymnast manifesting courage and the musician moderation. The idea of balance was prevalent in many Greek city-states during this time. The ancient Spartans were renowned for their warring culture, and despite that reputation, they adhered to the practice that as a warrior matured and became more effective in battle, he must parallel that potency equally with virtue in order to discern the self-restraint required during times of peace and times of war. Whether or not this was put into place can be debated by modern historians, though the history keepers and philosophers of their time felt compelled to record these balancing qualities as the ideal. Our purpose today is not to discuss the accuracy of these beliefs, nor debate the perceived qualities of these individual disciplines in their fully developed states, but rather to draw attention to the notion that harmonious balance was a recognized ideal in one of the great cultures of ancient times. And, most importantly, that music was one of these essential disciplines. There is a fine line between being essential, or for the sake of our discussion, crucial, and being favorable. To be favorable would be as added salt to a recipe in order to give it more flavor, whereas to be essential or crucial would be as an indispensable ingredient upon which the success of the final product is based. We believe that music is essential to a complete, balanced, and harmonious being, which can be both enjoyed like salt and respected as a primary ingredient in the recipe of life. for life. Harmony is edifying. Numerous studies confirm the benefits of music as part of a balanced K-12 education. These benefits range from speech-language development to advanced arithmetic performance to improved social skills. Our special guest this evening, Dr. Julia Nguyen, will be sharing her experience in music shortly. And while she is not a professional musician, she can attest to many of the benefits that music training has provided her in schooling and in her career. While it is never too late to learn an instrument or take a music class, learning is cumulative. Our early childhood music together classes build awareness to physical and spatial properties such as space and time. These sessions also engage verbal, gross motor, and social development through singing and movement alongside peers and parents. Group classes, such as our Music Safari beginning keyboard class, provide opportunities for elementary-aged children to engage more fine motor and reading development. Finally, private instruction allows students of all ages to learn and refine an instrument, cultivating what we hope to be a lifelong passion for music. Here are some of our students in our recent virtual performance classes.
I will be playing Yankee Doodle theme and variations arranged by Kathy Blocky.
My name is Evan.
My name is Ethan, and we both would like to play Dragon, My Pet Dragon. I would like to go to Mars, and Alawate.
Kaslowitz. I will be performing Angelus ad Pastoras Ait by Hans Leo Hasler. And my favorite part of springtime is probably either the really nice, perfect weather or that really like earthy smell that you get right after a spring rainfall. Angelus ad pastores ait, 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 annuncio vobis, gaudium annum, annuncio vobis, gaudium annum, quia natus est vobis hodie, quia natus est vobis hodie, vobis hodie, salvator mundi, salvator mundi, salvator mundi.
As with any musical journey, there are interesting stories and lessons learned along the way. We are honored to welcome a former student of our school, Julia, as she shares with us her experience as a student. Throughout our conversations leading up to this evening, she continued to share the importance and value of music in her life. We begin the conversation with some of the specific ways that music lessons have given her success in her life in the sciences. If you had to isolate to just three, what do you feel are the top three lessons that you've learned through your music study that you've personally applied to your life outside of music, in academia or in the professional realm? And which one of these stands alone as the top lesson?
I think a lot of what I learned during my time studying music, I've been able to apply to my life outside music. But one of the top things I learned is how to be calm and confident in front of an audience. As an introvert, I'm not a huge fan of talking and being in front of a crowd. But I found that during my graduate career and even as an undergraduate researcher, talking about the really cool science you're doing and sharing your ideas with colleagues is really important to ensure your work benefits your field and helps drive innovation. Going to recitals and learning to stay focused and calm even when you make a mistake was an invaluable lesson to me and helped make me a better presenter. I'll admit, my first few recitals were pretty rough, but my instructors and the audience were so supportive, and after a few goes, I got the hang of it.
Now, this is a common thing, and it might be good for our young viewers to know. Did you ever get to a point where you were comfortable performing, where you were no longer nervous?
I don't think I ever got to the point where I was not nervous before a recital, but I definitely became more calm and confident over the years. I would also say learning to set goals and working to achieve them was another important skill I learned during my time playing piano and violin at the Pakachoag Music School. As a musician, in order to improve, you're constantly setting goals like, I need to master this scale, or I need to learn this piece. And you are often breaking down bigger tasks into smaller goals. Like when you have a big piece and you decide, oh, I need to learn this section, and then I need to learn this section, and then I need to make sure I'm getting the notes and rhythm right. Then I need to interpret the music and play expressively. And all this goal setting really came in handy in college and grad school. I found college to be much less structured and scheduled than high school, but I would say that this skill was particularly important for me in graduate school, where there's minimal structure. I suspect this is true across a majority of fields, but as a chemist, projects were very open ended, and you really needed to be self motivated and learn to set reasonable goals with reasonable hours in order to get things done while not burning out. I watched a lot of my peers really struggle with this lack of structure, and I appreciated having learned to set goals and break down bigger tasks into more reasonable goals at a younger age. Finally, I would say creative problem solving was another important skill I learned studying music. I think creativity is underrated in the STEM fields. Obviously, a strong understanding of the fundamentals is important, but academic knowledge is not enough. In grad school, you're doing novel research, and thus you can run into problems that no one else has had to deal with before. And often the best solutions are out of the box and require some creative thinking. I think music really fosters this creative thinking from tinkering around with your respective instrument to figuring out how you want to interpret and express a piece of music. It's hard to pick what was the top or most important thing I learned, but I would have to say for me, it was the performance aspect. I was a really shy kid, and music helped me grow to be more confident.
The great American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow famously said, "Music is the universal language of mankind." In our initial conversations, I learned that you are first generation Vietnamese American, a commonality I share, and that I am first generation Filipino American. With this universality to which Longfellow refers, tell us about your experience as a first generation American and the role that music played in your life. Were there some cultural differences or boundaries that music served as a sort of bridge to developing connections and relationships?
Yeah, so I would say as a kid, you are hyper aware of differences between you and your peers. And definitely being first generation American adds another layer to that. Your parents speak with an accent, they send you to school with quote unquote weird lunches, and they don't really understand all the customs. So, for example, for holidays, my parents would go through the motions for Thanksgiving and Christmas, but it wasn't particularly meaningful for us, and we had no idea what to do with Easter. Um, so I think a lot of first generation kids feel sort of caught between two worlds, their parents' culture that they brought with them from their country of origin, and the American culture that they are immersed in at school and with their peers. And there is a struggle to find a sense of belonging, which can lead to feelings of isolation. I also grew up in Auburn, which is not a very diverse town, and not seeing a lot of people outside my family that looked like me helped contribute to this sense of isolation. The great thing about music, however, is that you're all working towards some common goal in a way that sort of transcends these cultural differences. It's going to sound cheesy, but everyone is working hard to create something beautiful. And as a listener, music has this ability to evoke emotions that crosses the borders of language, culture, and nationality. I think that universality was why I always felt a strong sense of community with my fellow students and Pakachoag Music School as a whole. Plus, I found you could always bond with people over the stress of recitals and the struggle to maintain practice schedules.
With all of the music you had as a child, did your parents have a musical background? In addition to being a first generation American, were you also a sort of first generation musician as well?
Both my parents love music. As a kid, there would constantly be Vietnamese music playing in the house, and both my parents really loved singing, which was a blessing when one of them was singing, but a curse when the other was, though I will not name who's who. Um, but because of this love for music, they were really supportive of me studying music. I think they were especially enthusiastic and supportive of my musical efforts because they themselves never had the privilege of studying music formally. Um, However, I do think a tricky part of having immigrant parents who aren't super familiar with Western music is that their scope of possible instruments to play is pretty narrow. I played violin and piano, which are probably the most popular instruments, and I never even considered other instruments. I think my brother had a better approach. He did a lot more exploring and played the flute, violin, French horn. He did voice, and he also performed in a musical that Pakachoag put on.
Are there any unique Vietnamese traditions in your family outside of music, or perhaps outside of what might be considered an American tradition, musically speaking?
I would say food is the biggest cultural import that my parents brought from Vietnam. Um, Anytime there was a celebration, there would be Vietnamese food. Even on Thanksgiving, turkey would be served, but it would be served in conjunction with Vietnamese food like pho or spring rolls. Karaoke is a big thing in Vietnam, and pretty much all of my extended family partook. Um, at almost any large family gathering, there would be a part of the night where the adults would turn on the karaoke machine and sing these melancholy Vietnamese ballads while we children watched, sometimes in amusement, sometimes in horror.
Reflecting back on your time as a Pakachoag music student, what was one of your favorite memories, whether it be a first performance or unique experience or perhaps even a aha moment?
I will always remember my first recital. I was so nervous and I was really, really reluctant, but my violin teacher convinced me to sign up. I dreaded that recital, and to be honest, the actual performance itself is a blur. But I remember afterwards, the audience clapped. My violin teacher told me I did a good job, and he gave me a bar of chocolate that he had brought back from Russia. And I just remember feeling a sense of pride for all the hard work I had done prior to the performance and thinking, yeah, I could definitely do this again.
It's been several years since you've studied at our school. What's your life like now? What are you doing professionally?
Yeah, so I played violin and piano throughout my middle school and high school years. After high school, I went to Williams College for undergrad, where I majored in economics and chemistry. I then moved on to the University of Washington, where I got my PhD in chemistry. I did my thesis work on developing novel methods for nickel and gold catalyzed cross-coupling reactions. After my PhD, I realized I didn't want to work in a lab for the rest of my life, so I took a bit of a break, did some teaching and lecturing in the University of Washington while trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And now I'm making a transition into data science.
With all your busyness, do you make time for music? What kind
Um,
of music do you
I'm afraid
enjoy
I
listening
don't
to?
really play violin or piano very much anymore. Um, However, I still listen to a lot of classical music, and violin and piano pieces still hold a special place in my heart. I've been on a bit of a Bach violin concertos kick lately, but yeah, I definitely still enjoy listening to classical music when I'm writing or working.
In our pre interview, you shared with me that you would like to get back into music at some point in your life. Would you be interested in studying violin or piano? Or both?
Both for sure. I think I probably would have an easier time getting back into the piano, but I like both instruments and I hope to get back into both sometime in the future when I have more free time.
That's wonderful, and what we all want to hear. In case you weren't aware, our Pakachoag Connect program is providing remote lessons, so you're welcome to reach out at any time. I'd like to come back full circle to the importance, the value of music. What takeaway, what final thought or message could you share with our viewers on why music is important, has value, and why we should, as individuals and as a culture, engage music more actively in our lives?
So I think right now we live in a world that's really divided. Everything from the circles we travel in to even the news we get is fractured and disconnected. And I think this COVID situation is worsening these feelings of isolation and disconnection. And so that's why I think music, which has this unique ability to transcend boundaries and unite us, is so important and why I think we benefit from having more music in our lives. I don't think it was an accident that at the height of the pandemic, Italians were singing and playing music together on their balconies to try to find comfort and connection. And I think the world could use a bit more of that comfort and connection.
I don't think that could have been worded more beautifully and completely. Julia, thank you for being with us today and sharing your story. We wish you the best in everything you do. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
In closing, we thank each of you for your interest in our school and for taking the time to share this journey together. It is our hope that you will keep in touch and continue to engage music as we move forward through 2021, discovering new ways to harmony together as a community. Thank you.